We're living through a pandemic. Countries all around the world have been facing the spread of a type of virus that has found a fertile ground to grow. This pandemic has brought us social, economic, and political damages, and it affects our countries in different ways, but it's been harming the whole world. And I'm not talking about COVID. I'm talking about the pandemic of autocratization around the world. The 2024 Varieties of Democracy report states that 71% of the world's population is under autocracies right now. It is equivalent to 5.7 billion people, and it has grown 48% if compared to 10 years ago. We have 42 countries under autocratization processes around the globe right now. And if compared to 20 years ago, we had 11. And only 18 countries are democratizing instead of the 35 we had 20 years ago. So autocracies are spreading. And its transmission can be quite similar to virus. The autocratic leaders themselves, they have the power to spread their ideas, their practices, the way they deal with democratic environments or not that democratic environments. And I would say that these practices and ways to deal with it, I mean, they are in the air, they are everywhere, and they find ways to propagate these authoritarian ideas, and in some more direct or indirect ways, and even in some coordinated ways, they spread their modus operandi in a wide way around the globe. But just like diseases, the autocratization process also have symptoms. And it's different from one country to another. Sometimes the symptoms and these visible signs are more obvious. Other times, they are less obvious. And they have been, and when we can see this kind of symptoms in different ways in different countries. For example, the curtailing of civil liberties, the manipulation of electoral processes, and other kinds of ways that can show, and other kinds of symptoms that show us that we are going through autocratization processes. And sometimes, and as in a disease or in another kind of pandemic, there can be sometimes there is only one symptom. Sometimes there are lots of symptoms together. And sometimes the symptoms might be more subtle, and sometimes they're more intense, but they're certainly there undermining our health. In every situation also, when there's a disease, when we're struck by a virus, our immune system tries to fight it, tries to keep our health. And the same thing happens when we are living under an autocratic escalation. We have a civil society responding to the backsliding of democracy. We have institutions responding in different ways as well. And we have we have all these kinds of responses to deal with and to try to restore our health and try to restore the health of our democracies. There's another element we can identify in those pandemics: mutations. Virus can adapt and mutate, as well as autocrats can find different ways to undermine democracy. And sometimes they can find more effective ways and different ways to lead the undermining of democracy. The main strategies we've seen today is undermining democracy from within the own democratic system. And that is how in different countries, many authoritarian leaders that pretend to be democratic ones are trying to undermine the democratic landscape all around. And of course, there are vaccines. As well as we have experienced during COVID, creating vaccines and promoting vaccination is the only way for us to really fight in an effective way and beat this pandemic. So there are these measures, and for the autocratic pandemic, we have different measures that can be created and developed all around, so we can make our democratic system less vulnerable and more willing to respond to any kinds of attacks we may have. These measures, for example, they can be numerous. And for example, they can be political education, strengthening of civil society, enhancing the public debate, reducing political tension, and also calling and articulating the international community, for example. But what am I making this analogy? And because every person in this room and everyone around the world has lived through COVID, and everyone here knows what it took for us to beat this pandemic. And I think it might help us understand how this pandemic has been developing. And so I went with three main elements I think we should pay attention to when thinking about the ways and the strategies we should articulate in order to beat this pandemic. The first one is engaging in international collaboration. We cannot forget how important it is for us to be united and for us to coordinate international strategies and actions in order to fight and beat this pandemic. In Brazil, for example, we were really inspired by what the US civil society did in 2020 in order for us to create our own strategy to defend the electoral integrity in Brazil in 2022. The second element is implementing domestic measures. Of course, each country has its own political context, its own measures and policies that should be implemented. And in Brazil, but the main thing here, I think, is we have to be united and build coalitions for us to be able to fight these huge attacks. And in Brazil, for example, we've been building, and I've been building and leading for the past 6 years, Pacto, pela. That is a coalition that brings together over 230 organizations in Brazil in order to strengthen and defend democracy. And the last one is, one more time, vaccines. We really need to create an environment where we can make our systems stronger, make our systems less vulnerable. And even though vaccines are not the cure, they can help us deal and be stronger in order to react, to respond, and for our democracies to prevail in a more efficient way. So let's unite globally and locally to ensure democracy prevails, because we've recently overcame a pandemic, so let's do it again. Thank you.